Donni Ray, and this is the PRIV Talks podcast. Join me and my team as we pull back the curtain on work, life, family, friendship, leadership, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. We hope these conversations will inspire you, make you feel connected, and bring you a laugh. Welcome to the Momcast. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi.
We are back. We're going to intro our guest right away because we have so much to talk about. We have somebody here that I've actually talked about on the podcast before, somebody whose story really struck my heart. And I actually came across her on Instagram one morning before we were about to podcast. And I came in and I actually was completely off. I saw she has a story about her daughter was really sick in the hospital. And I am a true empath, in and out. And I feel all the feelings so heavily. And when I heard about your story, Jade, it really touched me. And so I came and talked about with my team, and we put together a little care package for you. And I was like, I want to have her on the podcast one day.
Aw, thank you.
And I'm so happy that you're finally here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Jade Brittany. Is that how, that's your handle? Jade Brittany
Jade Brittany blog. Yeah.
Jade Brittany blog.
But Jade, you can call me Jade.
That's where you can find her.
Yeah.
A lot of you guys have, you're a local influencer. A lot of you guys probably follow her, know about her. We've worked a lot with you.
Yeah.
So it may not be new, but I'm so excited to just pick your brain and hear your story.
I'm really excited.
And I thought, we've been gone. We've been off for a few months.
Yeah.
There's been a global pandemic. That's been strange.
That's been a little bit interesting.
It's been interesting.
The 5-month summer was a little bit busy with the children running
spring
around.
break, 5-month spring break.
Oh, right?
So I had a moment this morning where I was thinking about, we did a podcast right middle of March, right when the pandemic came to a shutdown for us. And we were kind of secretly doing it. And Katie, you said before we started, you're like, okay, guys, let's not talk too much about COVID. We called it coronavirus at that point. Yeah. Let's not talk too much about coronavirus because it might be gone in 2 weeks and then this is going to be irrelevant and we don't know when this is going to air. And fast forward 7 months, homeschooling.
No end in sight.
There's no end in sight. And that
Full
podcast was
lockdown.
as relevant then as it is today. I was just had a moment of reflection on how much our world has changed around us. And
just yesterday, I think bars are shut down again.
Yeah.
Bars and nightclubs.
And our numbers are rising again, and we're going into fall. So
It feels like we're a week or two from more lockdown.
it's really scary.
I'm just concerned. This is super selfish, but I really need a break from my kids. I love them and I loved the time we had together, and it will be kind of weird to have them back at school. But I think for me, I need at least a week or two of no children in my home.
I took my kids to school yesterday. So that was the first day back. Some kids haven't even gone back because my kids are in private school and the public schools start, I think, Thursday or Friday. Some are next week. And we had a little car party with rap music. It was a celebration. My kids were excited to go back.
My kids are so excited. They go back tomorrow.
I'm not even sure I fully stopped the car in the roundabout.
See you later.
Yeah.
Talking about rap music, we rolled up to school, and Riley, my 9-year-old daughter, sees her best friend. She's like, oh, she hasn't seen her since before spring break. And she's like, oh, Isabella, I wonder if she still likes unicorns, because I used to like unicorns, and now I like rap music. Oh, you guys
People
are gonna
change,
have a fun day
right?
together.
It was kind of I don't know if you guys agree, but I had a bit of mixed feelings about the whole thing because we pulled up and just I think it's just measuring the change from 7 months ago to, I'm saying 7 because Emerson actually was very sick. I talked about it on the podcast before COVID.
Yeah,
Hindsight, maybe it was. Who knows what he had, but he missed 4 or 5 weeks of school.
He was so sick for
Missed February.
so long. Yeah.
So did Tristan. He missed 5 weeks of school.
And so I feel like 2020 has been a complete and utter shit show. And pulling up to school, I was happy to be getting some normalcy back, hopefully. But I actually teared up when I saw the principal and the teachers wearing full face shields, masks. And even Elias looked at me, he goes, Mom, it's kind of sad.
It's not going to be the same for our kids.
It's totally sad.
The safety vest didn't help either.
No.
To the look. I get they're taking full precaution. I'm totally supportive of it, but it was a bit eerie of a feeling.
It was eerie.
I feel very blessed that our kids do go to a private school and they have very small classes. So they're in a class with 18 people. There's 174 kids in their school. So I feel
that makes
like
a big difference.
You know, if I were to be in the position right now where I was sending my daughter back to a class of 30 to 35 students, and I don't know if I would do it. I don't know how I would feel about that.
There's 1,100
in a school
kids.
with like 600. Yeah.
There's 1,100 kids where my kids go to school.
Oh my
It's the
goodness.
largest elementary school in all of BC.
Completely understand parents that are making the decision to still homeschool.
Yeah.
For safety purposes or
precautionary.
My
My
mom
kids are
works
both
at
in
this
a-
school district, and she said at the elementary school she works at, out of like 600 kids, only 45 kids are being homeschooled.
Yeah,
So-
most of the people that I know are sending their kids
I think all the
back,
parents
but
are like, we need the break.
Okay, we know how hard it is, though. Like, how many people out there, not that you couldn't respect teachers, but like have an even greater appreciation of teachers now
Yeah.
after doing it. Like, I can't even.
Their
I don't-
jobs are under immense pressure right now, and I have so much respect for them.
I don't think I went through a harder time in my life than trying to juggle running this business,
Yeah. And we were
homeschooling, running my life. Like, I mean, I had 3 kids at the time. During COVID, I had another one. So like truly, like my days would start at like 5:30 and they were full, like cooking and manage. Like it was just a full-time job, like completely even getting school in there. And I don't know how. I asked the teachers honestly in a one-on-one. I said, okay, how good did we do? Like I want to know, like compared to the other families.
Yeah.
And they're like, you guys were like you'd be like 2/3. So like there was like a third of the people that like did more and 2/3 of the families that did less. I'm like, I'm okay with being in that position. Like we did what we could for schooling, but at some point like we had to like shut the days down and just like have some like outside time or whatever.
I didn't teach one thing. My husband did it all. I
gonna
was so
say.
busy. Ryan did it, but I actually had to cut at the end of May. I was like, we're done, right? Because Ryan and my then 11-year-old, now 12-year-old, has autism and is very vocal about what he does not like. And at the time, it was his dad. He was like, we need, and he expressed in no simple
hard for
terms
them.
that they needed to stop homeschooling together, or Tristan was never going to. Tristan was probably going to move out. I don't know.
How did you do with it, Jade?
Terrible. Terrible. It was so hard. I had 2 kids in 2 different grades, and I mean, there was just so many websites with so many different passwords for both children.
The password sheet alone was like just keeping that tabs on that
I
was
had
impossible.
wrong passwords. I was emailing both teachers. It was a nightmare. There was tears. I remember one day you messaged me and you're like, there has been many tears shed this morning. And I'm like, okay, we're in the same boat. Like, you're not alone.
Finally, I was like, okay, we're doing 8:30 to 11:30. We'd never go past that.
And that's a long time. And because
Yeah.
our kids don't look at us like we're teachers because they've been to school, right?
Right.
So we're mom to them, and then all of a sudden we're mom and teacher, and they don't want to listen to us be teacher.
And I've talked so much on the podcast about balancing. Like, a lot of our listeners run businesses or have jobs, and they
Well,
juggle.
I also had a newborn too, right?
Right.
So Leo was just 2 months old when we went into this, and I mean, it was tough.
And
it
now
was
he's
super
like,
tough.
Oh my God, it's crazy how much time has passed. But it's pretty wild how people juggled, like work.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one thing if you were off, but there was a lot of moms working from home.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like that would be one of the biggest changes I noticed through COVID. Looking back now, would be, you know, we shut down for a little bit there. I was probably home for 2 or 3 weeks before we decided I needed to start coming back into the office. So I kind of had homeschooling up and running. But I started leaving Riley at home with Tia, who's 14, but sometimes just by herself because I had to go to work. So she started to cook for herself and take care of herself. And I look at her now, I'm like, you've grown up so much in the last 5 months because you've had to, because I haven't been there holding your hand.
Yeah. Kiana
That could
learned
be a
how to
blessing
make
in
dinner.
disguise.
Oh, I'm not upset about
Yeah,
it,
teaching
except
them
for
a
the
little
attitude and the
independence.
rap music.
Yeah.
Everything else is great.
There's a lot of women though that are they're calling it the she session, that they're talking about these women that have juggled both, and then the men kind of just like scurry off to work like it's nothing, but the women, like, you cannot escape your kids.
No.
And so it's been, I think, a real wake up call. Like how I vocalized it before is like all of a sudden mom became the most important job.
Yeah.
Like, and it should always have been the most important job, but I think in my life it validated how important that was.
And you, like, I'm sure you probably felt the same, but we're so bonded as a family. Like, we had more family dinners than we ever had before, more family movie nights, because we weren't, I mean, I would see Katie. Like, as soon as the quarantine hit, I was like, quarantine buddy, we're in.
Well, we work together. So
We're
worked
in the
together.
bubble together.
Yeah, we were in the bubble together. But other than Katie, we weren't seeing anyone. So we were just at home playing board game. Like, we built puzzles with our kids, board games. Like, I felt like our kids had our undivided attention.
My kids spent a lot of time on the iPads.
Yeah.
So did mine.
Remember when we were loading up at the liquor store right when it hit? And I had like 10 boxes of wine at my house, and then they were gone, and COVID was still here.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember loading up on groceries and then asking Carson to pick
Every
them up.
2 weeks, getting 2 weeks worth of groceries,
Yeah.
but it'd be gone by like 5 days.
Oh, but at one point I did like a massive shop.
you
Like,
did
I was that
$800.
person.
You text me, you're like, we just ordered $800 worth from Save on Foods.
But I was a major asshole because I asked my friend to pick it up. I'm like, do you mind just swinging by and grabbing my groceries? On the way she pulls up, she's like, there was like 17 bins. I'm like, you never know. And I have a big family. And I was pregnant and hungry too at that point.
You still have like 30 Tetra packs of bone broth in your pantry.
That's right. I thought that would be the most important thing. And when everyone was stocking up on toilet paper, I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Like, get bone broth. It's so good for you. And I also stocked up on that Red Lobster cheese biscuits from Costco.
So good. Not good for you.
They are so good, though.
I've only ever tried them once.
I've never
and they're
had them.
delicious.
Try quarantining being like pregnant.
How many dill pickle chips did you eat?
Like a million.
Yeah.
But it's funny because as soon as I had the baby,
Gone.
cravings, like literally, I'm like, get the food. I could care less if I have groceries in my
You
house.
had a bag of dill pickled chips in your bed when he was
Born.
10 minutes old.
Elliot brought them.
Elliot went to get her mom
And
a
it was a
snack.
very sweet gesture. Thank you.
That
Can we
is
talk
sweet.
about your birth for a second?
We can talk about it.
I know you probably weren't going to bring it up, but you
Okay,
had
well,
an-
we were going to talk about the biggest change that happened to you in the last since we podcasted last. And for me, hands down, I had a baby. And then on top of it, like, I think it's just a huge personal feat because I wanted to have a home birth, but I didn't know if I could. Being like, I didn't know if I was brave enough to actually not go to the hospital, but I really wanted to keep that clinical experience away from, I wanted to hopefully have an enjoyable birth.
and have your family there.
And have my family there, and you couldn't do that at the hospital. And I actually like didn't really even have much of a choice in it because my labor was like 1 hour start to finish. But I would say truthfully it's the biggest accomplishment in my life. And I feel so proud.
Congratulations. He's
feel so proud.
beautiful.
He's unbelievable and probably my favorite. I hope my kids aren't
I
listening.
feel the same way about Leo.
He sleeps like 8 hours a night. I've never had this. And
That's
on this
amazing.
podcast, I have definitely wished for that many, many times. You guys have heard me. But he's like an incredibly sweet child. And I'm so lucky.
Aww.
I can't
The
wait to meet
photos
him.
are beautiful too.
Yeah.
The video, I saw the birth video.
I was kind of on the fence. I'm like, do I really want birth photography? Because it's so raw. And I would have rather if I'd like done my hair in the last 3 days before those photos were taken, or like maybe washed my face that day. But you can't choose the day you have a baby.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Just kidding.
And I was like, do you still want me to text that girl to come? And I'm like, okay. And I was like, these are going to be horrible. But it's real. Like, for me, it was like the most raw, real. I'm so happy the photos are just as they are. Even if my hair is a mess and
But that's what birth is,
Yeah.
right? It's not perfect. And it's just so beautiful. It's a beautiful part of life.
it's like the most beautiful. It's the hardest experience, but it's also the hands
I think
the
you're
most
lucky
rewarding.
too that you did get those photos, because there are a lot of moms that I'm talking to that under the circumstances of COVID, they can't have their birth photographer in the hospital. And so they've had that for some of their
100%.
children. and they're going to miss that for some.
Totally. Or they just don't even have a person in there that could take a photo. Like even if it was your mom generally, or, you know, your sister, like if your husband's supporting you or your partner,
They
you don't
can't be
have
taking
any.
the photos. Yeah.
My girlfriend had a baby during COVID, and luckily she actually had her nurse was an old friend.
Oh, thank God.
And so that was like her companion. And I'm like, I had goosebumps when she told me, and I was like crying because it's the most special thing. But it's also really dark that there's so many women that didn't get to experience that.
There's a
Like
photo of
millions
you guys
all over the world. It's
where Ev's crying in the photo. You can tell he's crying, and he's not usually like, I wouldn't say he's an emotional person.
No, not at all.
So you're like, you were still in the water holding Ever, and he's got his hand, and you can see that he's crying, and you're crying, and little Elliot is like coming, and I like when I'm even
you
tearing
feel
up
the
now.
emotion.
It was so beautiful. I was like,
I'd like to state for the record that Ev cried at every birth.
Did he?
Yeah, teared up for sure, not full tears.
Well, that's actually really
he had
big.
watery eyes.
do you feel like this was like he was maybe more emotional because it was at home and
Yeah, it
the
was
kids
pretty
were there?
powerful.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think knowing it's your last is that everything is emotional. I'm like moved into size 1 diapers, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to have a newborn diaper
You're
again.
not doing
Like,
this again?
You don't know that
you
for
don't know
sure.
that.
It was
I don't know it for sure.
maybe another sneak attack.
Well, that's the thing. You actually have to take precaution, or else like I will get pregnant again, because that is me. Like
me too.
I don't even think I have to have sex to get pregnant.
I know. I'm like,
He just
Cody, you
looks at
sneeze
you.
on me and I get pregnant.
Yeah.
Karen, what was your biggest change in COVID, do you think?
Like professionally for me, before COVID started, I had like a huge caseload of clients, and to be honest, I didn't love all of them. And
I hope they're not all listening.
no. All the clients that I have, I love. And that was a big change for me, is I realized that I didn't have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
So I had to choose to work with companies that I could really get behind.
Yeah.
And I think that now, even with the kids going back to school, my schedule opening up a bit, I'm just gonna keep doing it. Like I'm gonna stop taking jobs for the sake of jobs.
Yeah,
and
for,
unless
for
I
the
can-
money.
Yeah, I don't need to chase money. I'm very thankful that financially, like, we're good. And anytime I find myself chasing money, it
Never
feels
works.
inauthentic. I felt like I was just going through the motions for some people, and yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest change for me, is that
I think we all just had to be really selective with our time. Like all of a sudden there wasn't time for everything.
No.
And when so we went from like being a busy culture, everybody wearing their busy badge.
Yeah.
Way to go, Katie. And then all of a sudden it was like family first, you're at home, health, like we valued the lives of like the elderly and the sick, and all of like so much became more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And it was kind of brought back the value system we should have always had.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden all of this busyness just didn't make sense anymore.
That's if I could have put it more eloquent, that's exactly it. I was doing busy work, and it wasn't beneficial to that client, and it wasn't beneficial to me.
No.
So I feel like, and it's one of those things, you let one go and you get a client back that you're like super pumped up and passionate about, and you let a client go and then you get something that you're super pumped up and passionate about. So I feel like Ryan and I had a big conversation, because we're going to open up in September to taking on more clients, and I was like, I want to be selective.
Yeah.
Really selective with my
You just
time.
have to be passionate about whoever you're working with.
Like, I love, like, working with PRIV. Like, we were talking last night. Like, I check sales more times a day than is normal for a human being.
Well, you are truly part of our team. So I think it's a unique relationship that we
is.
have, because like we're friends and we also work together. But I think you should feel like that about all of your work.
That's right.
Like even like Jade, I feel like we've developed a friendship through working together.
Yep.
And it's like, shouldn't you kind of have a true authentic relationship with everybody you work with?
I think so. I think that makes a huge difference in, again, just being authentic to what you're representing and what you're portraying to your followers, or who's watching you and who's looking up to you.
What do you feel like has been the biggest change in the last like 6-7 months?
Definitely having Leo. He's just, I mean,
I can't believe he was 2 months going into it. I felt like he was older. How old is he now?
well, he's going to be 8 months old in a couple days.
Yeah, he looks like he's like going to be 1 year old.
I know. He's literally, I mean, I'm like, every morning I pull him out of his crib and I'm like, you look bigger. Like, you're growing literally every single night.
You posted that reel I went back and watched it yesterday, a couple weeks ago, and it was you and the kids, and they came in, and then you're like, show a picture of London, and you're like we lost. I don't know how you worded it. You said we lost the love of our life.
Yeah.
And then you like grab Leo, and you're like, and then 9 months later you came, and the timing of the whole thing is actually really crazy and clearly like sent from God.
It is. I mean, if I could go into detail about it, it is absolutely wild. And I mean, me and you, we've actually got into a little bit of a deeper conversation regarding, you know, the spiritual level of things and how there's, you know, a greater purpose and, you know, the universe and all that. Yeah. And just when it comes down to Leo being born exactly 40 weeks after London died, like I had no idea. And my mom was like, Jade, like, do you realize he was born on a Friday? And I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, do you remember London died on a Friday? And I was like, oh my God. She's like, he made Fridays good for us. And when I put it in the calendar and I looked at the day he was born, it was exactly 40 weeks after she died. I mean, holy cow.
Do you feel like she sent him to you?
100%. Yeah. And you know, her number, I mean, if you guys follow me, I've talked about the number 17 a lot. Everything to do with her had to do with the number 17. And when you look at his birthday being January 10th and he was born at 1:23 a.m., all the numbers equal 17.
No, 40 weeks, like that's incredible. Like we're not in charge of our lives.
Nope.
No. We like to think that we are, but we're truly like passengers
he was born
on a
early and it was an emergency C-section. And just when it all comes down to it, like and he was born at 1 o'clock in the morning. So if he would have been born an hour earlier, those times and dates wouldn't have equaled up. No. I mean, I've got goosebumps all down my legs. But yeah, just the way it went down at the hospital and the timing and everything. I mean, it was her. She sent him.
It's really like not our plan. Like I had all my babies. So my boys were all born on the 22nd of like different months, but my due date was the 24th. And I was like, oh, I wonder if he'll be born on the 22nd. Like, that would be super weird.
I remember.
And Elliot's the only one.
What are the chances of that?
Elliot's date was the 12th, but she was due on the 22nd, and I had her early. So I don't know, like, she's also my only girl. And then morning of the 22nd, I went and got checked. They're like, you're like a centimeter. I had no symptoms of, like,
I talked to you that morning, and I said, go run stairs.
Oh, and I did.
Do you remember that?
I did.
Like, go run the stairs.
And I did run the stairs.
Yeah.
Maybe that did it. And literally, he came like all of a sudden, it was like, boom, I'm in labor.
Fast and furious.
That's his birthday. Like, there wasn't like I labored for days or anything. Like, he was coming on the 22nd, and that was his plan. And all of like that fact alone
we need
is super
to go
weird.
We need to go see a numerologist.
We need to get to the bottom of it.
Isn't the number 12 for you guys too? Isn't that Elliot and no?
Me,
Elliot's
our brother Gord and Elliot and our aunt are all born on the 12th.
And my boys were both 7/12 at birth. Elliot was 6/12, and Ever was 8/12.
And
they were all 12.
Riley was 7/12.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's wild. Like, all the twos. And I went to a medium one point, and she was like, what's up with the twos? That was one of the first things she said to me. And I'm like, I don't know. But at that point, I only had 2 kids that were, like, born on the 22nd.
My kids
so
were
it's
both
kind of ironic.
7/12. Can Judy adopt me now? I'm really
you're
trying.
one of us, Karen.
I keep asking
I mean,
her.
we look the same today.
We do look exactly the same.
Okay, Katie, what's the biggest change for you? You've gone on another 24 vacations since we did this.
We had a family dinner last night, and we were talking about it. I'm like, I feel so blessed to live in British Columbia because even through this huge pandemic, we have had an amazing summer. We've spent a ton of family time together, dry camping, boating, just hanging out at our house. We live on a property with all of our children. So there's 10 of us that live on the property. So when it immediately hit, it kind of just brought us all closer together. Instead of having one family dinner a week, we were having 5 to 7, right? So I find it harder now getting back into real life to fit in the cheer schedule again and, you know, socializing with friends and whatnot, because every day we're just in our family chat. What are we doing tonight? What are we cooking tonight? Where are we going this weekend? You know, with like our small little bubble.
It's family first.
Yep.
That I think that's like the biggest positive aspect that has come out of it for us.
I feel like our society had to get there. Like, I just don't feel, and this might be like a really judgmental thing to say, I don't feel like as a society as a whole, we were living true to that. I even, and being a mom or not, even like Miriam posted something right at the beginning of COVID. It was like the first week. And she goes, I've had dinner with my husband more this week than I have in 3 months because she'd been traveling for work. And I actually teared up. I was like, that is so true. And so many people can relate to that. And it's just, we need to live authentically to like our purpose. And it's not about, you know, getting on Highway 1 and doing 100 appointments in a week and commuting and all the things. We don't need to do all the things.
No.
Or you can do it differently.
I was working from our cabin. We put Wi-Fi. We have 11 acres on Hornby Island. And we'd never had Wi-Fi in our cabin. So I put Wi-Fi in. I was literally working while my kids were like out playing in the yard, and they would go to the beach and I would meet them an hour later. But those are just things that wouldn't have happened. We went for 2 weeks. Yeah. And like, talk about going around BC. I'd never even been to Cultus Lake because we always go other places.
Oh, so many people have like explored BC. Like I would have been in like Palm Springs or like LA or
Vegas.
like all the places. I would have gone to Vegas, like
Katie and
all
me.
the places. But like instead, we went to Whistler last weekend. Whistler's beautiful.
We went to Whistler twice.
Very privileged to live in this.
We are.
Yeah, we have a beautiful there's so the mountains and lakes all within a few hours from us.
My favorite summer day was with Katie and Kevin. It was like just a couple weeks ago. We went out on the boat into Harrison, and I've never slept in a tent. True story.
And we all slept in a tent.
We all slept in a tent together, but it was like
and Ryan too.
Yeah, Ryan. Yeah, he was invited.
Like
he was there.
And apparently, I forgot the sleeping bag.
It was really funny. So we had this like great day out on the boat, and it was like no one was around. It was just our day. We laughed so hard, and then we went and we were like roasting things. I don't think I've ever seen stars like that. I'm like, this has been an hour away from me, and I've never experienced it. And so in the morning, I wake up at 6:30. Ryan's still sleeping. Katie's wrapped up in a blanket, still sleeping. Kevin's here, and I'm over here, like on 2 separate mattresses, obviously. And Kevin we make odd eye contact with each other, like. Hey.
That was weird.
And then Kevin's like, I'm freezing. He had literally like a square of a blanket that he managed to get from Katie. Katie's like, oh, what about this sleeping bag that she couldn't find the night before?
Oh my gosh.
It was really dark at night, and the tent was confusing me.
You got lost in the tent?
A little
I
bit.
got lost somewhere.
Anyways, it was one of my favorite days, but I just remember thinking like, this is Ryan and I on the way home. We're like, I can't even believe we've never done something like that.
Yeah, our family definitely made the most of it. We're already campers, so it was right in our element. But I had an amazing summer.
So many people, even if like I was a little homebound because I was like super pregnant and had a baby, then I had a newborn, and it's also kind of weird to like take your newborn out everywhere, right? So I was a lot quarantined for a long time. But so many people posted like amazing vacations, and I'm like, where are you? Like, it looks like you're in Hawaii, but it's like we explored our province.
So we went up to Shuswap last week, just for like the last week of summer. We always go up just the family, but we brought up our niece, who's the same age as my daughter. So we go into Boston Pizza in Merritt. We're a party of 7. So I'm like, we need 2 tables. You go into any restaurant before COVID and need 2 tables, or say, hey, we want our 2 little girls to sit by themselves and have a dinner date, they'd be like, no, an adult has to sit with them. No problem. Put all of us adults on one side, the 2 little girls on the other side of the restaurant. They sat, had a dinner date, ordered themselves. I saw 4 milkshakes go by, and I was like, I can't stand up and tell them not to, because you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
It was kind of a funny experience. They came out, they were like, can we always eat like that? I'm like, when we're a party of 6, more than 6, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like we should get into, in case people don't know who you are, Jade, and they're wondering, like, what's your story? Like, if you could kind of share it.
Okay.
As much as you can.
Yeah. Well, I am a mom of 4 from Langley. And
me too.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've just been through the ringer in the last few years. It's been a lot. My little girl London, that I was just talking about, she'll be 3 next month, actually. So yeah, she passed away last year in April, and she was sick. So she was a preemie. I had her actually, it's a crazy story. So I got pregnant back in 2016. And I had a subchorionic hematoma, which is a blood clot that I was bleeding from 6 weeks pregnant. And I bled all the way until 19 weeks pregnant. Like, I had my period. Like, it was like I was soaking overnight pads hourly some nights.
While you were pregnant?
Yeah. It was really bad.
So you probably thought you were miscarrying all the time.
All the time. I went to the emergency room 9 times before I had her. And every time I was like, passing blood clots and...
Yeah, no.
Okay.
On.
Okay.
Keep going.
I was like, is this too much?
No, it's not.
So yeah, no, and the doctors would do an ultrasound and they're like, nope, she still has a heartbeat. And I remember laying on the couch one day and I felt a tiny little bit of like, I mean, Cody was always cleaning up blood all over the house. Like, it was like leaking. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And I felt this like tiny gush come out of me, and I was 19 weeks pregnant, and I stood up and I was like, oh my God, Cody, like there's blood again. Like, can you clean it? Right. And he's like, it's not blood. And I was like, oh, weird. And so I laid on the couch and I was like, I kind of feel like I'm having contractions right now. This is so weird. And he's like, just lay there. And I ended up going to my girlfriend's birthday that night at the casino. And then I came back home. And in the morning I woke up and there was just blood clots again, right? So I went into the emergency and they actually told me to go straight up to a maternity, and where they did the ultrasound, and the doctor came in and said, like, are you here alone? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, my husband's at home with the kids. He's like, do you want to call him before we give you the news? And I was like, what do you, like, what? No, it's okay. Just tell me. And he's like, well, your water's broken, and there's no fluid in your sac. So, like, you are going to be giving birth tonight, and she's going to be stillborn. And like, my world came crashing down. I thought, there's no way. Like, I have been going through this whole pregnancy. Every time, no one told me that bleeding can cause your water to break. So
and at 19, you're still at 19 weeks at this point.
At 19 weeks.
At 19 weeks, like, you wouldn't even think water breaking was
I
even
have never
a
heard of it.
possibility.
It's called Pprom. There's actually a term for it: preterm premature rupture of membranes. And so I started joining all these Pprom groups on Facebook, and all these moms that were telling me, don't do it. Like, if there's a heartbeat, there's hope. And that was my motto. So I said, they wanted to induce me and said, there's no chance of your baby surviving. If she is, she's going to be in a wheelchair. She's going to be deaf. She's going to be blind. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just no chance. And all the doctors tried to, put me into labor and deliver her, and she wouldn't survive. And I fought it, and I said no. I'm going to continue being pregnant with her. And I was on bed rest for 4.5 weeks. I kept her in until 23 weeks, 5 days. They wouldn't even resuscitate her until I hit the 23 mark, 23 weeks.
Were you in the hospital the whole time?
For most of the time. I went home for 1 week.
Can they give you, like, that steroid shot that...
They did. Yeah,
grows the
I
lungs.
did have steroids. Yeah, so I did have the steroid shot. She ended up being born. I ended up like having like an incredible pain, and my placenta abrupted at 23 weeks, 5 days while I was in the hospital. They rushed me for an emergency C-section, and I called my husband. My husband actually just left, and he was almost at the kids' school picking them up. And I called him back, and I'm like, I'm having a C-section right now. And he's like, he ran like every red light to get there, but she had already been born. And oh my God, it's tough to talk about. She was born 1 pound, 1 ounce, and yeah, they took her away right away. They even told me she was a boy. I had no idea what was going on. It was super chaotic. They had a whole neonatologist team in there resuscitating her, and she fit like in the palm of my hand. Like, I didn't get to hold her for 10 days, but...
So they resuscitated her. She breathed.
Well, she was intubated for, I think, 2 months until I think a few days before Christmas was when they took the tube out.
What a brave decision for you to, force that 4 weeks, because that at that point was the difference between life and death.
It was.
Especially with all the pressure and like the negative
feedback that the doctors were giving me. Yeah, it was.
Like, I understand you can't promise, right? Like, you have to kind of give them the worst option, but... I mean, fast forward, like, you had so much time with London that you would have never had if she was born at 19 weeks.
Yeah, I would have never had it. And that's where I go into kind of believing in a greater purpose and a greater plan, because when I come down and think about everything that she went through, and I mean, the fact that she was born 17 weeks early and she passed away at 17 months old, and everything that comes down to the number 17, when the time she was born and how much she weighed and what the day she was cremated on, it's all the number 17. And a part of me just believes that she came to me for a reason, and everything. It's tough. I mean, I hate the term "everything happens for a reason."
Yeah.
I do not like that phrase, but
because it's just overdone. But
it
it's
is
true.
And I don't like when someone else says it to me either. But I believe that there was a greater plan for her coming to me and then leaving me.
Yeah.
And I still don't quite know what it is, but
Okay, so she went home from the hospital. How many months later?
5 months later.
5 months later.
She was in the NICU until a month after her due date. She came home in March. She was on oxygen at home and fed with an NG tube. So she had a tube up her nose, and I was a full-on medical mama.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was feeding with syringes and bags, and I had oxygen tanks all over my house, and it was just a whole new world for me. And then there was times that, we had to go back to the hospital, and I spent time back in the hospital. But it's just a whole new world out there that, like, day-to-day normal moms just don't realize that there's so many moms out there that are medical moms, and it's truly just another world.
How did your two older kids react when she came home, and then it was still you were feeding her through the tube, and like you said,
I mean,
being
my
a
kids are
nurse?
just, I'm so proud of them. They are amazing. It was a real life, I used it as a life learning lesson for them, teaching them that, not every kid is the same, and kids can be different. And, your sister might have glasses. She might be in a wheelchair. And I wanted them to, really value each child when they go to school, to prevent bullying and things like that, and so I really use that as a life lesson, that your sister is not like every other child, and she's a little bit different, but that's what makes her more special.
So, but she had milestones. Like, she made some amazing strides in her life, despite what anybody would have thought.
Absolutely. That's where I think, it's crazy. I always called her my earth angel, and I truly believe it, because she hit so many milestones that even the doctors were blown away. She was actually born with a grade 4 brain bleed. So one side of her brain bled like the worst. Grade 4 is the worst. Mm-hmm. And they said, her one side of her brain was a lot smaller. And they said, she's probably not going to crawl. And she did everything. She was a trooper. She stood up at 4 months old. She was sitting and standing and crawling and doing everything that they said she wouldn't do.
So at that point, when she's meeting those milestones too, you start to think, okay, well, she's going to keep exceeding milestones, and she's going to
totally
have a life.
I kept saying to the doctors, you look at her like a preemie, but you don't look at her like, I know my daughter is a fighter. What she has been through and how I've seen her fight, it was nothing I've ever seen before.
Well, they only look at the statistics, right?
Totally.
They didn't know her.
Mm-hmm.
So when it took a turn was just 2 weeks before she passed away, wasn't it?
So it was a month before she passed away, actually. 33 days she spent in the hospital at Children's. It was, I took her into the hospital. She was having some trouble breathing, and I took her into Surrey. And immediately we were whisked in, and we had 6 or 7 doctors working on her in the cardiac arrest room. It was there was no time to wait. Her oxygen levels were low, and it was terrifying. They then called Children's Hospital in Vancouver and said, you need to send an ambulance. And so they sent the critical care ambulance to take us to Children's. Sorry, I'm kind of stuttering here. Yeah. And so they actually sedated her, and it was horrible. They had masks on her, and she was crying, and so they fully sedated her, and she was sedated for a week or two. I didn't see her awake. And she was close to death. I didn't realize, but one of the top doctors in Vancouver, actually, she was the top. You don't get top than her. She pulled me and my husband aside and was we need to have the talk. And we're what do you mean the talk? Well, she's probably not going to make it through the night. She's the sickest child in Canada right now, or BC. And
And what sparked it?
So she had chronic lung disease from having premature lungs, and So she got RSV. I don't know if you guys have heard of RSV.
Yeah.
She had RSV and pneumonia, and it is a respiratory virus that basically attacks the lungs. And so her lungs were filled up with disease. And I mean, okay, so she fought it. I mean, she came back from near death 3 times in Children's Hospital, the times that we were there. It was unbelievable. The doctors are like, holy shit, your daughter is a fighter. Like, we've never seen this. Like, she is like literally just coming back and being fine.
Yeah.
And then just 2 days before she passed away, she was doing so good, and then she got RSV again, like the 4th time, and it was too much for her.
And so many people followed your journey, and I think that's what really, I don't want to call it, it's not a special experience, it's a horrific experience, but there were women and men, I'm sure everywhere, that were following it every single day. And I couldn't think about anything else. Like, I didn't know you, I didn't know London, but you had so many people that were just like rooting for her, and you shared it so openly. Like, how did you do that?
You know, it's funny. A lot of people ask me, like, and tell me and give me feedback that just how I share my life and our story is just so powerful. But I actually just don't see that. I wish I could see what other people see on the outside, but for me, I'm just being open and sharing. And for me, it was also a way to pass time in the hospital. I mean, it's very lonely in there.
Well, and you're also looking for support, right?
I mean, I've actually never even thought about this, but I can't even imagine how families are managing in Children's Hospital under COVID right now.
No.
How parents are not allowed to leave. And I mean, sometimes I'd meet moms in the hallways, and, you know, we'd go for a coffee and just say, hey, what's wrong with your child? This is what's wrong with mine. Not what's wrong, but what they're battling. And I just, to think about moms actually going through that alone right now is just, I can't even imagine.
No, because you had so many people reaching out and sharing their story.
So much support. And I remember you guys, even I just came out of a therapy session with like a psychiatrist at the hospital, and I came back into London's room, and there was 3 bags from PRIV there, and I was like, oh my God, like, and you guys didn't give it to me to promote, but just, it was really,
I almost didn't, like, it was what was holding me back from doing it. I remember that day in the office, we did the podcast. I said, I don't want to look opportunistic, like I'm trying to do this for anything, but she's been at the hospital. She needs some comfy clothes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure she hasn't been shopping for the last month. Like, it'd just be nice to give her something.
Yeah.
And it was Carly who, she packed up some packages for you. And then there was a couple other moms that you had been sharing.
Yeah. So,
and we packed up packages for all of you, and Carly's like, I'll ship it, but they won't take it. Like, they probably won't take it even up there. It might get lost. I'm like, just drive it down. Just go drive it. So she drove it down there and took it up.
Oh my God.
But we were
so
all just
sweet.
like in the office, we were all just feeling it.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, I felt like just being super open about it, I had so much support, that watching all these families around me that didn't have the same support that I did, I just felt almost like it was greedy of me to be taking all of this like support. So, you know, I actually would go through the hospital, walking through the hallways, and like grab some of my gift cards that I was given and be like, you know what, just take this. Like, I don't know what's on it. It was given to me, but and people were so appreciative over, I mean, a $20 gift card, or they were like, you know, just had so much gratitude. And it just, I had so much gratitude over how much was given to me, but it just feels like I just wish everybody had the same amount of support, because it was so helpful for me. I leaned on everybody for support.
Yeah, it's incredible. It also brought so much awareness to, you know, even as you're talking right now, and I know the story, and I have known it the whole way, I'm like having like honest conversations for maybe times I've taken COVID lightly and gone like, you know, because London, for example, would have been, I mean, I don't know how she would have done at this point in time.
This virus does affect the respiratory system.
Right.
And it would have completely affect her. Yeah, it is totally scary.
It's an incredible story. I do admire you for sharing it so freely, and I have a hard time sharing like a bad photo of myself. So I
do too, don't worry.
I think though, like this maybe leads to the conversation of how you are now. You have a new baby, you know, life is good. You've been through this traumatic experience, but it's like, I feel like you have such a good, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you have such a good understanding of it and it's an acceptance of your life as it is and so much to be grateful for. But now you're really focusing on your career as an influencer, and how has that affected that? Like how is life after grief, like during grief? Grief keeps going, I think, for so long.
I mean, so after Lennon died, I mean, being an influencer is kind of actually what kept me busy through my pregnancy. Like it was, some days it would hit me and I would be rock bottom, but I used being an influencer and working with shops and going and doing try-ons and like doing photos and things as a distraction, because honestly, dwelling in your grief, which so many people do, it's so hard to escape, and it's almost like you need to find your escape and your outlet of distraction.
Yeah.
And it really truly helped.
Yeah, grief is like a sinkhole. Like honestly, you can get so caught up and it's like then you just can't even get out of it.
You can't. Yesterday was one of the hardest days and I couldn't shake it.
And what was symbolic about yesterday?
Nothing.
Nothing. It just hits you randomly.
It just hits you. It could be like a song that comes on or like a photo. I mean, I did make that emotional video on my TikTok yesterday of London. And I think that actually might have been what triggered me, going through the notions of giving birth and losing her and really realizing like, holy shit, I have been through that. And because sometimes I like to like forget about it.
Of course.
Do you feel like sharing her on your social media, you kind of keep her alive with you a little bit?
I do, yeah. And, you know, I've been called out for asking for attention by sharing her. And I'm like, you know what? That one comment will sit with me for so long. But I'm like, no, like this is my page and this is my daughter who I have no more photos of her anymore. Like I've shared them all. So I'm going to keep sharing them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should.
Mm-hmm.
People are assholes. I saw you post once that like people were giving you parenting advice.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. And I'm like, what is wrong with people? It was like you were holding your son outside. Was that it? Or was that London?
Oh, yeah. That was, it was snowing and I went outside for a really quick photo. He had a toque on. I mean, I got blasted for not having mitts on him as I literally walked out the door and put him in the car.
I've never put mitts on my baby.
Never.
In the car.
Yeah, no. I know people like to mom shame all the time.
That's terrible.
And I'm like, we need to end the mom shaming.
Yeah, mom shaming on Instagram is like a really
that
big
will
thing.
never end though. Those people will always be out there, and you just have to have thick skin and
all those Karens with ease.
Yeah, know what you're doing is right for your family and move forward.
Yeah, I know. And people are giving me a hard time about not putting a mask on Leo. Well, I mean, a few people. And I'm like, they're like, don't get sick if your baby dies from COVID. And I'm like, you realize I have had a baby die, right? And I'm not going to put him at risk anymore. And, you know, putting a mask on your baby is actually putting them at risk.
And I feel like you are allowed to have that opinion since it was like a virus that attacked the lungs. It's very similar to what we're going through today.
Yeah.
I
don't know. Some people.
It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually I don't know if I actually have replied or if I just replied to you. There was some comments that I saw on there and I think I texted you. I was like, what is actually wrong with people? Mm-hmm. And you can't highlight that because you've touched more people positively than
I was going to say,
negative.
for every one of those terrible people, there's 10,000 that are cheering you on.
Totally, yeah. But sometimes it's funny how the one negative comment will sit with you more than the positive ones. It's just like, you do got to grow a certain type of, a shield and be able to block that away. And I feel like I'm starting to get there. Have you ever
read the 4 agreements?
No.
Oh, I read.
Oh,
I read one of them.
You read one of the agreements? Okay, so download it. It's a pretty fast read, I think, but you can get on Audible. But one of the agreements is don't take anything personally.
You know what? You were going to give me that one book. I'll trade you because I have the 4 agreements.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, bad or good. So if someone, it's almost like it's the agreement that keeps you humble, but at the same time says like this person says something, and none of it is personally related to me.
It's like that meme, and it's like people will love you or people will hate you, and neither of those things have anything to do with you.
That's right.
Yeah, I think I read the first 20 pages of the 4 agreements, and I'm like, I got it.
I got it.
I got it.
I mean,
it's a very powerful book.
It is it's one of my favorite. Like, I think that book changed my life.
I've heard from many people that book has changed their life.
Oh, I'm excited. I've never even heard of it.
Oh yeah, do it on Audible.
And
Okay.
I am a person that cares what people think. Like, I care about other people positively. I care
Me
about them
too.
negatively. So I care about people's opinions. I'm self-reflective, and if someone thinks something negatively, like I can't be like, oh, I don't care what people think. Like, I just do.
The best thing that ever happened to me was somebody was saying not nice things about me that weren't necessarily true, and I did nothing. I didn't fight with them. I didn't go follow behind and correct them.
And you're saying you're proud of that, or
I'm
you're
proud that I did nothing.
Yeah.
Because I think by
Having
me
grace.
doing nothing, the energy and the negativity that was trying to be created in that scenario was
You shut it down.
it was released. There was no I did this Marianne Williamson course where for 30 days you pray for someone who you don't like. And I felt like I was able to overshadow all that toxic energy with love, and the situation, it never
think I know
held
who you
any
prayed
weight
for.
on me. Yeah, you know who I prayed for, but it
And
never
you
had any
knew
weight
it-
on me.
You knew it wasn't you.
Yeah, because it had nothing to do with me. I was like, that's someone else's brokenness, but
And you know what? Truthfully, people do. I don't have a strong relationship with my dad, and I pray for him every single night.
Yeah.
Because I think he needs.
yes,
My
That's really
prayers.
nice of you.
Yeah, I do with my kids every
Yeah,
single
I
night.
don't. No way.
I think it's something we can always work on. Like, it's like.
Maybe I need to take notes from you, Donni.
Donnie, you guys can have a
Meanwhile-
call
Screw
every
you.
evening with
Meanwhile,
Donnie.
I'm thinking like the amount of discipline it takes to not react is a lot. Like, there's a couple times where lately I feel like people right now are really miserable. Like,
Yeah.
do you guys
They
find
are.
that?
Mental health is not good for a lot
No.
of people.
Like, they're struggling. Our world is in a really bad place, and they could be, struggling financially, or maybe they don't have a job. Who knows? Like, there's so many problems in our world right now. So I feel like everywhere I go, people are just assholes. Like, there's a lot of assholes out there right now.
Well, a lot of them are keyboard warriors, right? It's easy to be an asshole when you're typing.
Oh, that's even worse. But I'm even talking about in Costco. Like,
Oh,
there's a lot of them in Costco.
I had someone get mad at me for not wearing a mask.
I had a lot of people. They're like, "Stay back." I'm like 16 feet behind you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even understand this right now.
Yeah.
But like, regardless, like, have we forgotten about kindness? Because
Yeah.
we're all kindness, all of this, and then is that just like gone to shit right
I
now?
have not. I don't know. My whole world's about spreading kindness. Like,
Yeah.
And I personally really vibe with that. So it's just like, to spread it is not through negative responses. And
Yep.
so it's something I work on all the time. Not reacting, but I admire that. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's like having grace through negative situations, I
Yeah.
think, is a real strength.
I mean, it's not easy, and I'm definitely not like the
We're going to
Mother
do a little
Teresa.
15-minute
You
tutorial on how to do that.
You call me with all your negative comments.
I do.
So I was just the nicest person to this lady, and blah 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 blah. I'm like, get it out.
Yeah. I'll be like, when Katie was gone for a week, I was like, you need to come home because I need someone to talk to.
Which week?
I know.
Katie's been gone
leaving me
every second week.
she even saw me in shoe swap.
did.
But she's like, you
Well,
looked really grumpy.
We were sitting at Finn's eating. We'd like kind of just sat down, and Jade storms past me, but she was also
Storms.
also carrying the baby in a carrier.
And it was probably 35 degrees outside.
degrees. I'm sitting there with like my dress tied up as a top because you have to wear clothes in there, but my
Oh, yeah.
bathing suit on the bottom. And I'm like, what's that, Jade? She looks very angry. I'm like, who? But also, who knows what's going on in her life today? Like, you're
Yeah,
allowed
totally.
to be like that. And she's like, looks back on the day-to-day. She's like, no, I think that was just my face.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's
resting
fine.
bitch face. I
That's
mean, I get
fine.
very hangry, but it's like hot and angry, and hungry and angry,
Yeah.
but hot and angry. I do not do well in the heat.
I don't either.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the baby carrier and like
And
a
then having to go on a
35
boat
degree
ride
heat.
back, and I was probably
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know.
It's tough with a baby in the heat too, because you got to keep them cool and worry about
Yeah.
them. And
I don't
that's
know.
funny. You should have said hi.
It's
You
been
went by way too
Oh.
quickly.
well, that's another thing we're talking about. Like, people have been through it, but like a lot of like moms specifically have been through the ringer the last like half a year. So it's,
I mean, we
lot.
can't complain about being on vacation though.
no.
Then we're just gonna sound like assholes.
Anyways, the whole point is that like school is back, and so is the podcast, and that's exciting. And
I'm excited to be your first one back.
yeah, it's been like I'm really grateful that you came and shared your story. One thing we always ask our guests is one tip, and I think I actually wanted to relate this to somebody. What would you say to somebody who wanted to become an influencer like today?
Work hard. It is a lot harder than it looks. You have to be constantly hustling, and the one thing I think that is super important is building a relationship with your followers so that they feel like they're your friend, because the influencer, I guess, category is so saturated now with so many people trying to be an influencer. And I think what would make you stand out is to just be a friend to your followers and, you know, reply to every single message and share your life, share your story, be relatable, and just be honest and be true to yourself.
I think that's what really strikes me about your page is I truly feel like you have developed relationships with these people versus just posting a photo and like collecting likes.
Do you remember when I texted you and I was like so concerned about what my feed looked like?
Yes.
And I was fixated on having a pretty feed for so long, and it stressed me out. And you're like, you know what? I actually like your page because it's just authentic.
Yes.
And
100%.
I've stuck with that now. And now it's like one of my, like, I'm just so glad I don't stress about what picture I post anymore. I just post whatever I want. And it's the best thing. People love it.
I feel like you need to listen to like the reaction that you're getting. Like you're getting really good responses. You're getting really great engagement for your brands, great engagement for your followers. You had, what was the one of your reels had like 1 million views this week.
Yeah, it's almost at 1 million views. I can't even believe it. Like 860,000 views I'm at right now, which is wild.
I need to understand these reels a little bit more because I haven't really gotten to try to do one yet.
They're fun.
Yeah.
You weren't into TikTok either, so.
Well, no.
Zuckerberg wanted to buy TikTok, and TikTok gave him a middle finger. And so
is
Zuckerberg
Reels
said,
kind of like TikTok? Is that what it is?
It's the new TikTok on Instagram. You know how they took over stories like Snapchat?
Yes.
and then everyone stopped using Snapchat.
Yep.
my
And now they're doing this TikTok. But that's why they're punishing people that upload a video from TikTok. They're like lagging the sound and the video to screw with you.
Smart.
He's not a dummy.
Zuckerberg is a smarty pants.
Oh, he is. He's a genius.
Anyways, I think what you're doing is awesome, and yeah, I don't think you should care about the color scheme on your feed
Or how pretty your picture is. Just be relatable.
Well, it's just like truly, I think what you're doing is you capture a feeling, and like I can feel it, and that's I think why I connected with you in the first place. But that's the only thing that matters, because Instagram's like a second. It's like a second, and then it's like on to the next. And so if somebody, what's the saying? It's like people will forget the way you look, but they'll never remember the way you, or
People will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how
the
you
way
made
you
them
made
feel.
them feel.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Ain't that the truth?
We should end on that. It's good because I think we're almost out of time. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
I think that's it. We out.
We're out.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you love PRIV Talks podcast, please rate and review. Then DM us a screenshot of your review with your address to @PRIV Talks podcast so we can send you a free gift. Also, we want to keep the conversation going, so please join us on Instagram and get into our private Facebook group where we can chat and stay connected. Thank you so much. See you next time.